Hey guys, how's it going today? Welcome to another Insider PC video. In this video, I'm going to be showcasing you how important cases are when it comes to your PC performance and why you shouldn't always go for a case that is just for the looks, which is what I did in my circumstance. As you'll see in the footage, that some of my PC actually looks pretty damn good in terms of like the price I paid for it. I think at that time I paid $89.99 Canadian, which is about 66 USD for the PC case. And the PC case comes with a tempered glass panel. It comes with cable management holes. It comes even with a PSU shroud, which can cover the PSU and all the cables that goes with it. Not only that, it supports up to ATX and also provides you with 4 fans, and 3 of them are the front RGB intakes. Now, the biggest problem with this case is that it has an air intake issue. And I'm going to be getting to that very soon, but let's first talk about cases in general. So although most cases in the market are pretty good in terms of their compatibility and in terms of their airflow, some cases such as this MasterBox Lite sort of allures customers into its sort of looks and its beauty and the tempered glass and all that stuff, and sort of negates the purpose of airflow and the main reason why cases exists. See, a case exists so that it can flow air into your components, well, flow air over your components and keep them cool. And it's sort of like an enclosed box so that the air can be directed specifically into the sort of the motherboard, the CPU cooler or whatever it has, and the graphics card and the PSU as well, and make it so that your components are cool and they don't die down. So when you have a PC case like mine, which has a really bad intake, and I'll show you guys later in the video where I'm going to be taking up the front panel and sort of showing you how small the intakes are, it becomes really difficult unless the fans ramp up to insanely high speeds for the computer to get any sort of airflow going into it, and thus that causes a lot of heat problems within the case itself. And not only that, most non-reference graphics cards in the market are going to be open air. So you want to have as much neutral pressure as possible within a case when you're buying a case. This means neutral pressure basically means that you have as much air going into the system or into the case as much as it's expelling. So let's say you have a case with 2 fans at the front. You sort of want 2 fans generally at the top, maybe one, and on the back side another one. The top is especially important because the top actually allows you to expel heat much more efficiently, because as we know from science class, hot air rises, and it is very important for a lot of things such as PC cases to expel heat through the top. So if you find a case such as mine that doesn't have a top case, it's going to usually lead to a lot more of heat problems when it comes to open air designs or open GPU designs, or like if you have a water cooler or if you have an air cooler that is super beefy. Now, it is possible for me to actually take out the front panel and then allow a lot of air to be taken in from the front. But then this poses a lot of problems in terms of dust, and not only that, it doesn't actually solve the GPU problem for the case, because you're still creating positive pressure for the system when you are rendering videos or when you're editing videos, especially because if you're doing CUDA acceleration, you're actually using the GPU and the CPU at the same time. And also for a lot of games, it will actually push the CPU to around 66 degrees, all the way up to 80 degrees. In my situation, I will actually show you how much my CPU temperatures goes up to. So if the only way you can water cool in the case is to mount sort of the fan the radiators at the front, then all the hot air that's being expelled from the CPU, which albeit it won't affect it that much, but considering the GPU is also expelling heat and it's an open air GPU, it's going to just basically suck in the hot air from the CPU, thus causing more issues. Now, although this case is a lot of positive pressure, it still causes a huge amount of problem, because the front intake actually prevents sort of the 3 fans to bring in that much air. And in fact, even if I show you by opening up the case, you can see right at the top, that's not a huge intake. And there's actually dust buildup on the front cover, which is actually problematic, because this dust, so the dust showing up here sort of means that the computer is actually not doing, or these things are not actually doing its job in terms of keeping the dust out. And in fact, it's doing a terrible job. Now for 66 USD, this case is not terrible. Of course, you're gonna have its drawbacks, but I think you should stay away from this case, because for about $20 more, you get such a better case. And in fact, I'm gonna be doing a build with the Corsair 275R, which is another budget case, but it is a super good case. I'm going to show you why. It's not going to be like all RGB centric, but it's going to be super functional, and it's going to be quiet, and it's going to be actually reduce my decibels quite a bit when it comes to computer use cases. And actually, if we look at the top here as well, I don't know if you guys can see it, that is a really tiny intake at the top. So the top actually doesn't do anything in terms of like pulling air in, but the bottom, does somewhat of a good job, but albeit not that big. This is super tiny for 3 fans to pull air through. So you're always gonna have high pressure right about here, which is gonna sort of, or like it's gonna create a vacuum right about here, because all the fans are pulling air in through here, which is creating a vacuum. So if you put the PC case at the bottom, or the PC case on the floor, it's just sucking in all the dust. Terrible design. Please, Corsair, if you do look at their sort of new designs when it comes to the case designs that follow this principle, you'll actually see that they sort of cut out where the fans are. They actually took out the plastic part so that it doesn't show. But they still have one more case, the MasterCase Lite 5 ARGB, which is basically the exact same design as this, but it has 3 RGB fans, which sort of have individually controllable LEDs, as opposed to the single controllable LED for mine. But still, it is pretty bad that they're still selling this case. This case shouldn't be on the market. Now, let's say you're running a 1660 Ti, or like a really low-end CPU, or like a mid-range CPU, and not sort of like a 16 or 16 thread CPU like mine. You might not have as much issues as I do, but at the same time, you're gonna find it that the computer does get pretty loud in terms of its case. So yeah, let's go actually into the benchmarks. I'm going to show you how hot this PC case gets, and let me just put this back on so I can show you, if you don't do any modifications to the case, what the temperatures are going to be going to. So we're in our PC here, where we're doing the temperature checks in terms of the CPU and the GPU using a hardware monitor, and it's a free software by CPUID that you guys can use. And you can see here that the temperatures of the package is about 44 degrees with the utilization of 2% of the CPU. So it's a 16-thread processor with a 46 degrees temperature difference without an overclock on a 4 gigahertz. So Ryzen actually automatically overclocks the CPU to a certain degree to get the result, but then I'll showcase later in a video where you don't really, like, once you change the cases, you'll see that like the temperatures are much lower, just for the fact that it has proper airflow. But then, as you can see, the idle temperatures for the GPU is about 54 degrees, and the GPU utilization is about 27% in terms of its usage. You can see here that I'm running a stress test on using the IDA64 system stability test, where it's going to stress the system memory, CPU, and the GPU. And we're just going to click start here, and then as you can see, after a while, we're going to hit about 81 degrees on the CPU for the temperatures, and eventually it's going to sort of hover around 80, 81 to sometimes it goes up to 86 degrees if the CPU gets packed super hard or the GPU is working extra hard. Similarly, GPU would be around 80, 81 to 85 degrees, and as you will see in the following games, like these are the games that I play most, you will see that the GPU actually underclocks itself so that it can maintain some temperatures and it doesn't overthrottle. So here you can see that we're running a GPU core clock of 1530 megahertz. And this is important because if you have the lower clock speed you have, the worse the GPU performs. Similarly, on GTA 5, which doesn't actually do much of harm as Witcher 3 does in terms of the GPU performance, is you can see it's about 1730, and the CPU temperature is also 81 degrees because the CPU here is being pegged because of GPU. Well, it's not being pegged, but the CPU here is being pushed to its limits using GTA 5. On the other hand, you can see the GPU is completely underclocked in this situation in terms of Apex Legends, because this game I run at 1440p high, which actually really stresses the GPU out, and it's a fast-paced action game. So it definitely underclocks it down because it knows that it cannot push any higher, so it keeps it at that temperature. But yeah, so that's pretty much all the benchmark results. So yeah.
Another squad shooting at us.